Okay, so daylight saving time. It's been in the news a lot recently.
Yeah, it seems like it's always a hot topic this time of year, huh?
I mean, even President-elect Trump had something to say about it. You know, calling it inconvenient, very costly on Truth Social.
Hmm. Interesting.
So is there something to this, or is it just, more daylight in the summer, what's not to like, right?
Well, more daylight might sound great in theory, but, the reality is there's a lot more to it than just that.
That's why we're doing a deep dive today,
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
this whole world of DST.
Right.
We've got some fascinating stuff to go through.
Yeah. We got historical accounts. We've got some studies, public health analysis, all about, what this time shifting really means for us.
By the end of this, hopefully, people will understand, why this whole thing is so controversial.
Yeah.
Who benefits from it? Who doesn't benefit from it?
Right. And maybe form their own opinions about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a good place to start would be like with the origins.
Yeah.
Where did this whole thing even come from?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. It's interesting because it's become such a, ingrained ritual for us.
Yeah.
We do it twice a year. It's like a cultural quirk.
Totally.
But, it hasn't been around forever. It's really only been a little over a century.
Right.
And, there's still so much confusion and debate surrounding it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even I was surprised to learn, like it wasn't about farmers,
Oh, yeah.
which is like what everybody thinks.
That's what everybody says, right?
Yeah, it's like help the farmers. It's not about farmers at all.
Not at all. Actually, some of the earliest proponents of DST here in the U.S., they weren't thinking about agriculture at all. In fact, one of the sources you sent me, Spring Forward, the Annual Madness of Daylight Saving Time, it really dives into this. And, it shows that some of the most enthusiastic supporters were actually businesses,
Oh, interesting.
particularly department stores,
Okay.
looking to capitalize on those longer summer evenings.
Yeah.
Get people boost those shopping hours.
Well, it's all about getting people to spend more money.
Well, that seems to be part of the story. But, it does kind of burst that whole helping the farmers myth,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
totally. I mean, so it makes sense, but yeah, it is kind of,
It is.
it's a different perspective.
It is. And it's, a good example of how these, what seem like really simple decisions about time can actually have these, like, ripple effects across society,
Right.
even, on the economy.
Right.
Even beyond the economic motivations, though, implementing DST, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. It actually created this, like, really fascinating period in the U.S. that, historians sometimes call, like, the era of time chaos.
Time chaos.
Time chaos.
Okay. Yeah. Now I'm intrigued.
So picture this, right?
Tick.
Before we had standard time zones like we have today,
Right.
every town basically set their clocks according to the sun.
Yep.
So it was a very local system. And then, along came the railroads.
Oh, yeah.
The railroads needed to coordinate their schedules
What?
across these, vast distances.
Yeah.
So that leads to the adoption of railroad time, which, it's a step towards standardization.
Right.
But then DST comes along
Yeah.
and throws a wrench in the whole system.
So we go from like this hodgepodge jumble of like local times to like a somewhat organized system, and then we just mess it all up again with DST.
Pretty much. Imagine trying to coordinate train schedules when different towns are switching their clocks at different times or even using, different versions of DST.
Oh my gosh.
It was a mess.
That would be crazy.
It created this period of, like, incredible confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like, if every app on your phone had a different clock,
Right.
it would be maddening.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that would be a recipe for disaster, especially,
Right.
Back then when communication wasn't as instant as it is today.
Exactly, yeah.
So, okay, let's get to, like, I guess, the big question that everybody has about this.
Yeah,
Does DST actually save energy?
right.
I mean, that's what we've always been told, right?
That's the prevailing assumption, yeah.
Right.
But it might not be the whole story.
Okay.
In fact, some studies actually suggest that DST might increase energy consumption.
Wait, more energy use?
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
Especially in residential settings,
Right.
people's homes.
Okay.
One of the studies that you shared from MIT, it looked specifically at residential electricity use in Indiana.
Okay.
And they found that during DST, people were actually using more air conditioning in the evenings. Makes sense, right? The sun's up later, it's still hot out.
Yeah.
So, you're more likely to crank up the AC to stay comfortable.
Totally. I can definitely see myself doing that.
Right.
So if it's not really about like, energy savings? I mean, what are the real reasons for keeping DST around?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And are there, any downsides that we need to be thinking about?
Well, that's where I think the health argument comes in.
Okay.
And it's a pretty compelling one. And to really understand, like, why DST might be problematic for our health, I think we need to delve a little bit into what's called chronobiology.
Okay.
Have you heard of that term before?
Yeah, vaguely. Is that like our internal clock?
It is. Yeah. It's basically like the study of how our bodies function
Okay.
on this like 24-hour cycle.
Okay.
Our natural sleep-wake cycles, our hormone production,
Okay.
even our cognitive function. It's all regulated by this internal clock, which is also known as our circadian rhythm.
Right.
And it's deeply tied to, light and darkness.
Yeah.
And when we disrupt that rhythm, like we do with DST,
Okay.
it can have some, serious consequences for our health.
Yeah, it's almost like experiencing a mini jet lag twice a year.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And, particularly when we spring forward.
We're essentially like depriving ourselves of sleep.
Yeah.
And, our bodies just haven't fully adapted by the time we fall back.
Right.
So it's this like constant state of disruption.
So we're messing with our natural rhythms, and that's like not good. It's starting to connect the dots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And multiple studies have shown that there's actually a spike in like heart attacks.
Wow.
And even car accidents.
Oh, wow.
In the days following that, spring forward transition.
Right.
And, that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
Another source you sent, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine position statement on daylight saving time.
Right.
It details how DST can increase the risk of stroke, mood disorders, even like impaired immune function.
Wow. I had no idea it was that far reaching.
It's pretty significant.
And to think all this disruption just for like, an extra hour of daylight in the evening.
Right. And, the irony is that extra hour might not even be that beneficial in the long run. I mean, when we're sleep deprived, our cognitive function takes a hit.
Right.
We're more irritable. Our decision-making can be impaired.
Yeah. Like, it's that saying, like, shortcuts make for long delays or whatever it is.
Right.
It's like we think we're gaining time, but we might actually be losing out on, like, productivity, focus, and just, like, general well-being.
You got it. And there's even some research suggesting that, like, judges, you'd think they would be immune to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
They tend to hand down harsher sentences when they're sleep deprived, particularly after that spring forward shift.
It makes you wonder, like, how many other areas of our lives are, like, being impacted by this?
Right.
By this collective sleep deprivation.
Exactly.
What if your boss was sleep deprived because of DST? Would you be, like, comfortable asking for a raise?
Right. Good point.
It just, like, it really highlights, like, how interconnected our sleep is with everything.
It does. It really underscores why the potential negative consequences of DST need to be taken seriously.
Okay. So we've established that there are some, like, pretty serious downsides to DST, but I'm guessing there are some people out there who, like, genuinely enjoy it. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Otherwise, why would it still be a thing?
Plenty of people, they love those long summer evenings.
Right.
They might feel more productive after work. They might have more time for leisure activities.
Yeah.
Maybe they just, prefer the lighter evenings for like social gathering.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, those benefits are real. We shouldn't discount them.
So then what about making DST permanent?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that, like, solve the problem of the jarring time shifts twice a year?
Well, that's been a popular proposal.
Yeah.
And on the surface, it seems logical enough.
Right.
However, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, their position statement directly addresses this.
Okay.
And they actually present a really strong argument against it. The problem is that permanent DST would basically lock us into this perpetual state of misalignment with our natural sleep-wake cycles.
So all those negative health effects that we were just talking about, those would just become a year-round issue.
Exactly. Yeah. And think about, like, the winter months.
Right.
Imagine waking up in darkness, commuting in darkness, not seeing the sun until, like, really late in the morning.
Right.
Potentially even, like, close to noon in some regions.
Wow.
That kind of chronic misalignment, with natural light patterns,
right,
it could have, even more severe consequences for our mental and physical health
yeah,
than the current system.
So it's like a trade-off
Yeah.
between, enjoying those longer summer evenings, but then like potentially, sacrificing our well-being throughout the year.
It is a trade-off, yeah.
Okay. So this kind of brings us back to, President-elect Trump's statement
Yeah.
about abolishing DST.
Right.
What would like a return to standard time actually look like?
Yeah.
And like, would it really solve all these problems associated with DST?
Well, it's not a simple fix,
Right.
but a return to standard time would definitely align us more closely with, the natural rhythms of sunlight,
Right.
which, is a significant step in the right direction.
Okay.
Of course, there would be adjustments needed.
Yeah.
Potentially in everything from, school schedules to airline timetables, all that stuff.
Right.
But, from a public health perspective, aligning our timekeeping with our biology,
Right.
it seems like a worthwhile endeavor.
It makes you wonder, like, why we ever messed with the clocks in the first place.
I know, right?
It seems like we kind of created this problem for ourselves by trying to, like, manipulate time for economic gain or convenience without really fully understanding, like, what the consequences could be.
Yeah, it's a classic example of how, like, these seemingly small decisions
Right.
can have these, like, cascading effects.
Oh, wait.
Often unintended,
Right.
sometimes detrimental.
Right.
And, I think the DST debate is kind of like a microcosm of that phenomenon.
Yeah.
But, it also presents an opportunity.
Okay.
It's forcing us to, like, re-examine our relationship with time
Yeah.
and ask some really, like, fundamental questions
Yeah.
about how we want to structure our lives,
Right.
both, individually and collectively.
I'm starting to, like, see the bigger picture here. Like, this isn't just about clocks.
It's not, no.
It's about how we prioritize our health, our well-being,
Hmm.
even like our connection to, like, the natural world.
Absolutely. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, a really important question it raises is, are we prioritizing economic efficiency over the health and well-being of people?
Right.
DST is a perfect example of how these seemingly small decisions about time can have really far-reaching consequences.
That's such a profound point.
It is.
Yeah. It really makes you think. So where do we go from here? Like, is abolishing DST the answer, or, are there other ways to, like, organize our time that could work better for everyone?
I don't think there's a, one-size-fits-all solution here.
Right.
But the conversation itself
Right.
is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, some experts, they advocate for returning to a permanent standard time,
Right.
which would, at least align us more closely with those natural sleep-wake cycles.
Right.
Others, they propose, exploring more flexible work schedules, allowing individuals to kind of adjust, their start and end times
Right.
to better suit, their chronotypes and the amount of daylight available.
Flexible work schedules. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
It seems like you could address, the needs of both early birds and night owls,
Right.
and, allow people to work, when they're, like, most productive.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
It's a promising idea, but it would require, a pretty significant shift
Yeah.
in our work culture. Right.
Right.
It would also, require employers to be more understanding and accommodating
Yeah.
of individual sleep needs and preferences.
That's true. But perhaps, like, this DST debate can be the catalyst for those kinds of conversations. Maybe
Yeah.
it can push us towards, like, a more nuanced understanding of time.
Right.
One that recognizes, like, we're not all wired the same way.
Yeah.
And, and that flexibility can be, beneficial for both individuals and businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hopeful perspective. And I think it's, it's definitely a direction worth exploring.
Yeah.
This whole DST dilemma, it really highlights the tension, I think, between, individual time and collective time.
Right.
We have our own personal preferences, our
Right.
chronotypes, our sleep needs, but, we also have to function within a society that operates on a shared time system.
Yeah, totally.
So finding that balance is key, I think.
It's like we're trying to, like, fit everyone into the same mold
Yeah,
when it comes to time, which just, like, isn't realistic or healthy.
exactly.
We need to, like, find a way to, like, embrace, our differences
Right.
and, like, create a time system that works, like, with our biology, not against it.
Well said.
Yeah.
And perhaps this conversation about DST can be, the starting point
Yeah.
for, those larger societal shifts.
So let's say we do abolish DST.
Okay.
We go back to standard time.
Right.
Do we all magically adapt overnight?
Right.
Or is there going to be some sort of transition period where we have to adjust to the new schedule?
It's unlikely to be an instant fix.
Yeah.
Think about it. Businesses, schools, transportation systems,
Right.
everything's been structured around this current DST schedule for decades.
Right. I can see how that could create some logistical challenges.
Absolutely. There would likely be, a transition period,
Right.
We'd have to kind of recalibrate everything.
Right.
Meeting times, school bus routes,
Yeah.
all that stuff. It wouldn't be seamless,
Right.
but it's a challenge that we could overcome,
Yeah.
with careful planning and communication.
Wouldn't those short-term inconveniences though be worth it if it meant a healthier, happier population in the long run?
Well, that's the argument that a lot of health experts are making.
Okay.
They believe that the long-term benefits
Right.
of aligning our time with our natural sleep-wake cycles,
Right.
they far outweigh, the short-term disruptions
Right.
of a transition period.
Yeah.
And, they point to the potential economic benefits as well.
Economic benefits.
Yeah, I mean, there's a growing body of research that suggests that, sleep deprivation actually has a really significant negative impact on productivity
Oh, wow.
and economic growth.
Okay.
So improving sleep quality on a large scale
Right.
by, aligning our time system with our biology
Yeah.
could potentially lead to a more productive workforce and a stronger economy.
Wow. So this DST debate has ripple effects that extend way beyond just our clocks.
Way beyond.
We're talking about health, the economy, even the way we structure society.
It really is.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It's a fascinating case study, I think, in how, a seemingly simple concept like time
Right.
can have such, profound and multifaceted implications.
And it underscores the importance of, having these conversations, shining a light on these often hidden impacts of our time choices.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we often take time for granted,
Right.
but, it's arguably the most precious resource we have. And
Yeah.
this DST debate, I think, is a really powerful reminder that how we choose to spend our time, both individually and collectively, has a profound impact
Yeah.
on our lives.
So the next time you hear somebody, complaining about, losing an hour
Yeah.
or gaining an hour because of DST,
Right.
encourage them to think a little deeper
Yeah.
about what that hour really means.
What it really means. Yeah. Encourage them to consider the broader implications,
Right.
of messing with their clocks.
Yeah.
It's not just about convenience.
Right.
It's about our health, our well-being,
Yeah.
even our ability to, to function effectively
Yeah. As a society.
as a society.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexity of this whole issue.
Me too.
From, the quirky origins of DST to the intricacies of chronobiology
Yeah.
to the potential economic impacts.
Mm.
It's clear that this is about so much more than just an hour of daylight.
It is.
It really is a testament to how deeply intertwined time is with every aspect of our lives.
Mhm.
It is.
And it's a reminder, I think, that, we have the power to make choices about how we use our time.
We do.
Choices that can either, enhance or detract from our well-being. Yeah, I don't know about you, but after this whole conversation, I'm definitely looking at time a little differently.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really going to be paying more attention to my sleep habits and how those lost or gained hours,
Right.
from DST are actually affecting me.
Yeah. And, that's a great takeaway. I think, awareness is the first step toward making any positive changes.
Right, right.
And, for those of you who are intrigued and want to, explore this topic further, there are some really great resources out there.
Yeah, totally.
The National Sleep Foundation, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
They have a ton of information on the science of sleep, the impact of DST, and even practical tips,
Yeah.
for improving what they call your sleep hygiene.
Yeah, the National Sleep Foundation, they're amazing.
They are. They've been advocating for policies that prioritize sleep health for a long time.
Absolutely.
Their website is a gold mine.
Mhm.
They even have, like, tips for adjusting your sleep habits, regardless of whether DST gets abolished or not.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of adjusting, even if we do switch back to permanent standard time, there's still a lot we can all do, on an individual level and to
Right.
kind of optimize our relationship with time.
Okay. Yeah.
And, it starts with understanding your own chronotype.
Chronotype, is that it? Like, whether you're a morning person or a night owl?
That's it, exactly. Your chronotype is basically your natural sleep-wake preference.
Okay.
Right. It determines when you're most alert, when you're most productive.
Okay.
And, once you know your chronotype, you can actually start like structuring your day
Yeah.
in a way that aligns with those natural rhythms.
That makes so much sense. It's like, we're trying to force everyone to operate on the same schedule
Yeah.
when we're all, like, wired so differently.
Right, exactly. Embracing that flexibility, that individuality.
Right.
It's really key, I think, to creating a time system that actually works
Yeah.
for everyone.
So I guess to kind of wrap things up, I think the biggest takeaway from this whole deep dive is that, you know, time is precious,
It is.
maybe even like our most precious resource.
It might be.
And we need to start treating it as such.
Absolutely.
And, whether or not DST gets abolished, there's a lot we can do, both individually and collectively,
We can.
to make sure we're spending our time in a way that, promotes our health and happiness and just like overall well-being.
Well said. Maybe it's time we stop thinking about saving daylight and instead focus on truly living in it
Yeah,
in a way that works for us, not against us.
that's a great thought. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of daylight saving time. Thanks for joining us.